Hello, I'm Harry, and I'm 30 years old. Let me tell you about something that has completely surprised me. Lately, life has been weighing down on me. I've gotten stuck in a routine that seems impossible to break. My job is fine, just a regular office job, but it feels more like a trap than an opportunity. I can hardly make a living, always controlling my spending, never able to buy the things I want or need. Most days, it feels like I'm living on autopilot. I haven't had a real vacation in years, and whenever I try to break free, something always stands in my way. At this point, I think it's time for a change, even if just for a little while. I decided to take a trip to a different state, a quick getaway to clear my mind. I needed to take a break from everything, even if only for a few days, a new perspective, something that could help me reset. When I went to book the tickets, things didn't go exactly as planned. There was only one train car available, not ideal, just one available spot, and it wasn't exactly private. It was my only option, and I had to share with someone. I wasn't thrilled about that, but I figured it was better than sitting in a crowded car with strangers, so I booked it. I packed my things, called a taxi, and headed to the station. The ride to the station was uneventful, typical traffic, but I couldn't stop thinking about the trip ahead. Maybe this would be the change I needed. Once at the station, I followed the signs to my car. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I hoped for a peaceful ride. I opened the door to my car, and that's when everything changed. Sitting across from me was someone I definitely hadn't expected to see, Madison, Brad's mother. Brad and I aren't exactly close friends, but we've known each other for a long time. We've met each other's parents a few times, but we never really spent much time together. I had exchanged pleasantries with his mom, but that was about it. And here she was, sitting across from me. Madison didn't look like your typical 45-year-old woman, she looked more like she was in her early 30s. Her blonde hair was styled elegantly, and she had a kind of grace about her. She wasn't just attractive, she was the kind of woman who could instantly capture attention without even trying. I stood there for a second, stunned, not knowing what to say. I never expected to run into her, let alone sit in the same car with her. Madison? I stammered. I didn't expect to see you here. She looked up from her book and smiled, though I could tell she was just as surprised as I was. This is a surprise, she said in her voice, as if this was a regular occurrence. I guess we're both in the same boat. Now, I felt a little awkward. This wasn't exactly how I pictured my train ride, but I didn't have much choice, so I stepped in and took a seat. We exchanged a few polite words. Neither of us really knew how to handle the situation. She was as courteous as ever, but I could tell we were both a little uncomfortable. I lowered my head, not wanting to make things more awkward, and so the journey began. At first, we didn't say much to each other. The silence was thick, but somehow comforting. The train kept moving, and I tried to relax, but my mind kept racing. What did it mean to share a train car with Brad's mom? Was this just a random coincidence, or was there something more to it? I wasn't sure where this unexpected encounter was headed, but I knew one thing, it was going to be a long ride. It's funny how life works. Sometimes, you go from a normal day to something completely unexpected, and before you know it, you're stuck in a situation you could never have predicted. That's exactly how I felt sitting there with Madison. My mind was racing, but I couldn't make sense of anything. I kept thinking about how awkward it was. What were the odds of us being in the same place at the same time? We sat there for a few minutes in silence, each of us perhaps trying to figure out what to do next. The train moved steadily, the rhythm of the tracks almost soothing, but the situation itself was anything but. I couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence between us, like both of us were unsure how to break it. Finally, I spoke up. So, how's Brad doing? Breaking the silence seemed like the easiest way to start a conversation, especially since we didn't know each other that well. I knew Brad's mom, but we'd never really had a deep conversation before. Madison looked up from her book, as if surprised I was talking to her. Oh, he's fine. Busy with work, you know, the usual stuff, she smiled, but there was a touch of sadness in her eyes, which made me curious. What about you? How's everything with you? I wasn't sure how to answer. I wanted to be honest, but I didn't want to sound like I was complaining. But I guess sometimes it's hard to keep everything bottled up, so I shrugged lightly and said, things have been a bit tough lately. I feel stuck, you know? Everything seems to be going in circles. It's fine, but it's not what I want to be doing with my life. Yeah, I've been there too, Madison nodded, her eyes softening. Life can be overwhelming, especially when things don't go as planned. I've been in a tough spot myself a few years ago. I didn't expect that response. It was clear she wasn't just offering empty sympathy, she really understood what I was saying. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. I don't want to pry, but there's something about your openness that makes me feel comfortable talking more. With a slight smile, she continued, I was in a bad relationship for a long time. We had a lot of problems, and I stuck it out for a while because I didn't want to hurt Brad. But when he turned 18, I realized it was time to move on. It wasn't healthy for me, and it wasn't good for him to see it either. So, I left. I've been on my own for a few years now. Her voice had a quiet strength, something raw and real. It was clear she wasn't the type to shy away from difficult decisions, even when they hurt. I took a deep breath, wanting to say something, but I wasn't sure what I would get in return. I'm not in the best place myself, I said softly. I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure things out, but nothing seems to stick. She nodded slowly, her gaze understanding. Life's not easy, but sometimes you just need to take a step back and do something for yourself. That's why I decided to take this trip. I needed to get away for a while to clear my mind. I was suffocating, you know? Everything was coming at me all at once. I just needed a change of scenery for a bit. We both sat there, letting the conversation settle between us. The awkwardness seemed to melt away, and we began to understand each other a little more, trying to find common ground. Do you have any expectations for this trip? She asked, breaking the silence again. I paused before answering honestly. I'm not really sure. Maybe just a little chance to breathe. I think I've been so focused on just getting by that I've forgotten what it really feels like to live. She smiled softly, her eyes thoughtful. Sometimes we all forget that. But it's important to find those moments, even if they're small. Life's too short to just go through the motions. She was right. I knew she was right, but it wasn't always easy to remember. The train rumbled on, and the conversation continued. We talked about more than just our struggles, our favorite books, places we wanted to visit, the little things that make life worth living. And in that moment, I realized something. Madison wasn't just Brad's mom anymore. She was someone who, despite everything, knew how to find joy in life. Someone who understood what I was going through, even though we were in completely different stages of life. The train ride was long, but for the first time in a while, I didn't feel lonely. The hours passed by faster than I expected, and honestly, the more I talked to Madison, the less I cared about how awkward the situation was. We talked about everything and nothing, work, life, random things that made us laugh. The distance between us seemed to shrink, and the conversation flowed naturally, like we had known each other for years, not just two strangers sharing a train car. So, what do you do, Harry, aside from the usual stuff? Madison asked, taking a sip of coffee with a teasing smile on her face. I chuckled. Well, I work in construction. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Nothing too exciting. Sometimes, it feels like I'm just stuck in a cycle of surviving, you know? She nodded as if she completely understood. I get that. I had a pretty steady job for years, but it didn't make me feel alive. So, I changed everything. Took a risk. I started my own business. I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Risk? What kind of risk? Madison leaned back in her seat, her eyes distant. It wasn't easy at first, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I'm much happier now than I was before. She smiled, but it wasn't the typical polished smile I was used to seeing. It was softer, a little vulnerable. And it made me respect her more. "It sounds like you've got it figured out," I said, genuinely admiring her. "I wish I could say the same for myself." She smiled lightly. "I'm still figuring things out, just like everyone else. Don't let appearances fool you." We both laughed, but for a moment, there was a peaceful silence between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, just calm. I could feel the shift in our dynamic. The conversation wasn't just some random chat anymore, it had become more personal and real. A few seconds passed, and I looked at her, feeling an unexpected urge to ask something I hadn't planned. "So what made you decide to take this trip? I mean, you didn't just randomly jump onto a train, did you?" She stopped, a brief smile playing on her lips as she glanced out the window. "Well, no, it wasn't completely spontaneous. I just needed a change of scenery. I've been on my own for a while, and sometimes you just need to get away to reconnect with yourself, you know?" I nodded, understanding more than I expected. "Yeah, I get that. I've been in the same boat. I've been stuck in a routine for too long. Like you wake up, go through the motions, and before you know it, years have passed and nothing has changed." Madison looked at me with a certain intensity in her eyes. "It's easy to fall into that trap, but you can't let it define you. There's so much more out there, you just have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone." I thought about that for a moment. Madison wasn't just talking about her life, it felt like she was speaking directly to me, almost like she was giving me permission to do something different, to break free from the things that had been holding me back. Maybe I needed to take some of my own advice, I muttered to myself more than to her. She smiled at me, but this time it was different, softer, almost as if she understood more than she was letting on. "But you don't have to do it alone, Harry. Sometimes having someone there helps." Once again, it felt like we were starting to understand each other on a deeper level. I didn't know what this connection meant, but it felt real, and the more we spoke, the more I realized that maybe this trip wasn't just about getting away for a few days. Maybe it was about finding something I hadn't realized I needed. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Maybe we all need a little help sometimes. It's just hard to admit that." Madison chuckled. "Yeah, but that's the beginning." Our conversation took another turn, and we continued chatting, laughing, sharing small details of our lives that most people wouldn't even think to share. It felt so natural, so easy, even though I'd only known her for a few hours. But there was something about her that made me feel comfortable, like I could be honest with her without being judged. As the journey went on, and the silence between us grew, we weren't just two strangers sitting in the same compartment anymore. We were two people who had somehow found a connection in the middle of a train ride, and that was something I hadn't expected at all. Madison leaned forward, her voice dropping a little, almost as if she was hesitant. "You know, I'm glad I ended this train ride with you, Harry. It's not often you meet someone you can really talk to." I smiled, a little surprised by how much that meant to her. "Yeah, me too. It's been great, not what I expected, but definitely a good change." The trip had taken on a new meaning. We weren't just two people on a train anymore, we were two people who were beginning to truly connect with each other, even if it was unexpected. Hours seemed to pass by, and as the train slowly approached my station, I couldn't help but feel a strange, mixed emotion. This trip had been so much more than I'd ever imagined. Madison and I had talked nonstop, and I was starting to realize just how easy it had been to connect with her. We'd shared more laughs and stories than I could count, and it felt like we'd crossed an unspoken boundary, from strangers to something more comfortable, even though I still couldn't quite put a name to it. The landscape outside began to change as we neared my stop. The city was just minutes away, and the fact that I was about to leave this unexpected connection behind started to hit me. I glanced over at Madison, who was staring out the window, her fingers lightly brushing the rim of her coffee cup. "Hey, Harry," she said, breaking the silence. Her voice almost hesitant. "Yeah?" I replied, turning to her, a bit confused by the change in her tone as if the lightness had suddenly disappeared. "We've had a good time, haven't we?" This trip has been unexpected, but honestly, I didn't think it would be this much fun. I smiled and nodded. Yeah, it really has. I didn't expect the conversation to be so good, but I'm glad it happened. It's been great. Madison leaned forward, her gaze more serious now. Now I'm wondering if you'd be open to the idea of extending this a little longer. I mean, the trip is almost over, but if we went a little further together, spent more time together, maybe go on vacation like you said? I felt a sudden jolt of surprise run through me. What do you mean? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel my heart racing a bit. She paused for a second, as if carefully weighing her words, and then spoke slower, this time. I don't know, we've got this great connection, and the idea of just getting off the train and going back to normal life doesn't sit right with me. I was thinking maybe you'd want to come with me for a few more days. We could go somewhere else, enjoy life, no work, no responsibilities, just the two of us. I looked at her for a second, not sure how to respond. Her proposal sounded so natural, so sudden, but there was something very sincere in her eyes that made it hard to refuse. Madison had a way of making everything seem possible, as if nothing was beyond reach, and it was hard not to get caught up in that energy. But at the same time, my practical side kicked in. I had responsibilities waiting for me at home, work, routines I'd spent a lot of time building. Was I really ready to leave all that behind and travel impulsively with someone I had just met? Was that a good idea? I don't know, I said, rubbing the back of my neck, feeling conflicted. I've never done anything like this before. I mean, we just met, I'm not sure about leaving everything behind. She looked at me for a moment, her expression softening. I get it. It's a big ask, and I'm not trying to pressure you. I just thought maybe it's time to try something different. Life's too short to always play it safe. Her words really hit me. She was right. Life was too short, and maybe I had spent too much time being cautious, avoiding risks that could lead to something unexpected. I guess she was right. Yeah, I guess you're right, I sighed. Why not? I've got nothing to lose. Just a few days, right? Madison smiled, and her eyes lit up. Just a few days, and who knows? Maybe it will turn into something bigger, or maybe it'll just be a great story to tell. I thought about it for a moment longer, weighing the decision. And then, as the train neared my stop, I made up my mind. All right, let's do it. Madison's smile grew wider, and I could see the excitement in her eyes. Really? You're sure? I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty at the same time. Yeah, I'm sure. Let's make this trip something we'll both remember. The train pulled into the station with a gentle whine, and I stood up to grab my bag. Madison followed suit, her eyes still sparkling with a mix of excitement and surprise as I headed toward the exit. I could feel the weight of the decision I had just made. I was really doing this, ready for something completely unexpected. But before I could think too much about it, Madison's voice called me back. Harry, she said, her voice soft, but full of promise. Come on. The adventure is just beginning. And with that, we stepped off the train together, ready to see where this unexpected journey would take us. The streets are bustling with the energy of people going about their work, tourists taking photos, and street vendors selling everything from local snacks to handcrafted jewelry. We wandered down cobblestone streets, veering into small shops, chatting with locals. There's something refreshing about having no plan, just going wherever our feet take us. We stop at a small cafe by the water and sip coffee while watching the sunset. The landscape is stunning, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink reflecting on the water. It feels like a moment from a movie, but here I am, living it. When we finally return to the hotel, it's late, and the city lights are flickering. The distance casts a soft glow over everything, and we both feel like we've seen enough for one day, but we're not ready to call it a night yet. Back in the room, Madison opens the minibar and pulls out a bottle of wine. Shall we have a drink? She asks in her soft voice. I feel like we should toast to this crazy adventure. Yeah, why not? I reply. A little wine sounds perfect right now. She pours 2 glasses and hands me one. We clink our glasses, and I can't help but feel that this is one of those moments when everything just feels right. No pressure, no expectations, just 2 people enjoying the moment. We sit on the bed, the soft glow of the city lights filtering through the window, and talk about everything and nothing. The conversation flows easily, as if we've known each other for years, not just a few days. We talk about our lives, our dreams, and even some of our fears. It's the kind of late-night conversation where the world feels a little quieter, and everything seems a little more meaningful. We drink, laugh, and share stories until the bottle is empty. When we're done, the room feels warm and cozy, and I don't know when it happened, but that magic moment crept in. It was one of those nights where time seems to stand still. We weren't in a rush, and there was no ticking clock. It felt like we were in our own little bubble, separated from the rest of the world. As the night wears on, the atmosphere between us shifts. We're no longer strangers, and it's clear that this isn't just a random trip anymore, something deeper is developing between us. I can tell Madison feels it too. Her eyes soften when she looks at me, and for a moment, neither of us says anything. It's one of those moments when words aren't necessary. Soon, the room grows silent except for the soft hum of the city outside. It's late, and we both know we should sleep, but neither of us is in a hurry to end the night. This moment will be one we both remember, no matter what happens next. This evening will always stand out as something special, a perfect end to a day full of surprises. Weeks pass, and before we know it, we've reached the halfway point of our trip. I still can't believe how smoothly everything has gone. What started as an impulsive decision turned into something far bigger than I expected. Madison and I are exploring the world together, meeting new people, seeing new places. I couldn't ask for a better companion. We visited so many cities in the past 2 weeks, each one more beautiful than the last. From the vibrant streets of the city where we started to the quiet charm of small coastal towns, every place has left us with unforgettable memories. We've walked, talked, and eaten our way through without a care in the world, almost as if we were living in a dream. Our bond has grown stronger with each passing day. What began as an ordinary trip has quickly become something much deeper. We both know this, even though we've never said it out loud. It's not just about the excitement of being in new places, it's about us, the connection we're forming. The ease with which we connect feels so natural, as though we've always been part of each other's lives. For the first time in a long while, I can't deny it anymore, I feel alive, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. This trip is everything I needed. At 29, I had been living in emptiness for too long. My work, the stress, the expectations, all of it had drained me. I was exhausted, and I didn't know how to stop, but this reset was just what I needed. Madison seems to feel the same way. For many reasons, she had gone through a painful divorce just a few months before we met. It was a painful chapter in her life, and she never really had a chance to breathe after everything fell apart. But this trip, this break from reality, has given her the space to reflect on herself and enjoy life again. We've never talked about the details of her marriage or divorce, she doesn't need to tell me everything, but I can see in her eyes that she's grateful for this time away, just like I am. It's not just about escaping our pasts, it's about cherishing the present. The fact that we're here, together, in this moment, with no deadlines, no pressure, no obligations, we're free. We spend our days wandering through beautiful markets, tasting strange foods, and talking about anything and everything. We visit museums, sit by the river, and lose track of time. The cozy little cafes have a sense of peace in the air. It's a freedom I haven't felt in years. In the evenings, we sit outside, have drinks, and talk about our dreams, hopes, and what we want from life. It's simple but perfect. Madison tells me about her plans for the future, how she wants to start over and pursue the things that make her happy. I share my own hopes, telling her I dream of hitting pause on everything and finding a new direction. It's not just about the places we've been or the things we've done, it's the time we've spent with each other. The long walks, the quiet dinners, the moments when we don't need to say anything but simply enjoy each other's company. Those are the most important moments. As the days go by, it's clear that we're both going through something important, something we didn't expect when we first decided to take this trip. It's no longer just a vacation, it's a turning point for both of us, and I can't help but think that maybe everything happened just the way it was supposed to. In those 2 weeks, we both found something we didn't know we were looking for, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. It's been 2 months since we returned from that trip, and everything has settled back into a comfortable rhythm. Madison and I still meet up, but we make sure to keep it a secret. We don't want anyone to know about us, not yet. There's nothing special about keeping it between the two of us. No outside pressure, no expectations, just us enjoying each other's company without the weight of the world on our shoulders. We meet in quiet cafes, take walks in the park, and spend evenings watching movies at one of our places. We're keeping things simple. The truth is, we both know that something has changed in those 2 weeks. We've become more than just travel companions. There's a bond between us, and now, there's something deeper. It's not yet love, but it's real, and we both feel it. The more time we spend together, the more we realize that being in the same city doesn't work anymore. It's not that we don't enjoy being together, it's just that when we're in a different city, away from our everyday lives, we feel like we can truly be ourselves. No pressure, no past, no baggage, just the two of us. And we love that. So we start talking about another trip, this time something bigger, something that could push both of us out of our comfort zones again. China seems like the perfect place, a place neither of us has been, but one we both want to experience together. The idea of spending 2 months there is both exciting and a bit daunting, but we're both up for the challenge. The thought of exploring a completely different culture, seeing ancient temples, strolling through bustling markets, and tasting foods we've never dreamed of, it feels like the next step for us. As we sit together one evening, talking about the details of our potential trip, I can't help but feel thankful for everything that has happened between us during this journey. This connection has given me something I didn't know I needed, a new perspective on life. Madison feels the same way. We don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I feel okay with that. Maybe this is just a phase, maybe it's not, but that's not important. What matters is that right now, we're both in a good place, together. And for that, I'm so grateful. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything that's happened, I can't help but smile. This journey, both literally and figuratively, has been one of the most unexpected but rewarding experiences of my life. If you told me 2 months ago that I'd be sitting here planning another big adventure with Madison, I would have laughed. But life has a funny way of surprising you, and maybe that's what I've learned through all this. Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. When you take a chance, step out of your comfort zone, and let things unfold naturally. I know that whatever happens next, this will always be a chapter I'll look back on fondly. Whether we end up in China or somewhere completely different, this is a journey of connection, and the memories are what matter most. Thank you for watching and following along through this story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I lived it. If you liked this story, please leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about how everything unfolded, and as always, seize the opportunity. You never know what could happen when you step out of your comfort zone.